DJ Hero came about mainly off the back of a few concepts we had at FreeStyle probably 4 years ago, something like that. And we were playing around with a hip-hop game. We were using all the elements, and we had just come out and we were kind of thinking, how can we do a cool social game that tries to bring a bunch of people into the living room?
The entire aim is to make the player feel like they're DJing, make them feel like they are controlling the music and dictating what you're hearing. That was the challenge.
We loved Guitar Hero just as game fans and music fans. It was great, but we were like, okay, well, how can you get other kinds of music in this? And that's where we really started to focus on the DJ side of the original concepts that we were looking at on Wii.
From the start of the project, what we wanted to bring to the game musically was a sense of fun, I think. Mostly a sense of fun and a sense that music can live inside other music, and that music can be mixed in ways that are exciting and bring something unique to both of the pieces of content that you're working with.
So we decided to just go with mashups pretty much at day one. If we'd just taken a single track, got our controller, and then marked it up, that's not DJing. That's just a rhythm game. You could do that on a PSP. You don't even need a controller for it.
We wanted to use all music of any type, as long as we felt passionate that it was an amazing track, and then find ways to blend them together with a sense of humour and with a light touch, in a way that would allow people to find something new in each song that they might not have heard before. It was nothing too serious and it was nothing too restricted. It was just about having fun with records, which is, really at its heart what DJing is.
So in the early days of DJ Hero, back when we were just thinking about being a Wii product, everything was kind of driven through the remote. And we started to think about how you could do some cool add-ons to just slip the remote into to make it feel a little bit different. But then Guitar Hero came out and we kind of really opened to this idea that people will buy a different peripheral for their game, and it actually works. And we just got our hands dirty. We just kind of ripped stuff apart and said, okay, what's got to be the core movement? Guitar Hero, your core movements with the guitar are you're strumming and you're playing with notes. What are our core things going to be? And we went around the office and just friends, family, loved ones, whatever, and said, what does a DJ do to you? And pretty much everyone went, waka, waka, waka. And we were like, right, people really relate to a DJ and a turntable. That's obvious. Even if people are not familiar with the turntable, they know that that's involved in some way, shape or form. And similarly with the crossfader as well. So we thought, well, we want to make them our core gameplay elements. So the first thing was just a size test. We didn't really think about the style too much. We kind of made it feel a little bit like a turntable, but it was more about how big does the platter need to be, where do the buttons need to be, what does the crossfader need to feel like. We then added some extra pieces like the Euphoria button and stuff went on. And then we did another version where we started to think about styling a little bit more. And that's when we kind of got signed up with Activision, and we were able to hand this whole process to Red Octane, the Guitar Hero business unit, and they know what they're doing when it comes to peripherals, so it's great to just hand it over. You guys have got to make this manufacturable and robust. And a few months later we got this other version back, and it was smaller and tighter and everything worked differently, but it essentially had everything we'd designed in it.
One of the first things that people notice about DJ Hero is there's only one turntable platter, and when you look at a real setup, there's at least two, of course. Reason for that, if the rest of the controller was like another spinning platter here, to play the game you would have to constantly look down and see where your hands were. Because there's one, it means that you can constantly stare at the screen.
By presenting people with this kind of concept, people were much more open to playing it. And it does account for everything, those core principles of DJing. The key gameplay feature on this side is your crossfader.
It mimics a crossfader exactly a real DJ mixer. So when the crossfader is over to the left, you hear the left turntable. Over to the right, you hear the right turntable.
Leave it in the middle, you play both tracks. So the game will basically tell you when you need to crossfade. You'll have to follow a path, and it's kind of like, I was liking it to the very first Commodore 64 driving game I played. It's like left or right, and you just went around the road like this. But it's a nice simple mechanic, but it works really well. The other things on this side, these aren't core gameplay buttons, but these are your kind of freestyle stuff. So you've got your effects dial, which is our version of the whammy bar, so you can pitch up, pitch down the track, let effects over the track in predetermined areas. And you've got your Euphoria button. So this is our version of Star Power. So once you've hit a perfect section, you can build up Euphoria, and you just trigger it doing this, and then that basically multiplies your score. So whatever multiplier you're in, you'll get double that again to a maximum of ×8. And to keep it looking nice and cool, we've kind of hidden all of the console-specific buttons under here, which is a nice feature because you need them to navigate the menus, but it's kind of also nice to just shut them away and keep it quite clean.
Now what we've managed to do is we found a way to map 2 records onto one spinning platter. We did that by having 3 buttons. The green button represents record A, which is the left turntable, and the blue button represents record B, which is the right turntable. Now the red button is the sample button, which allows you to drop samples over your mix as you wish, add a little bit of creativity.
But what's quite nice is you can load the samples up at the start of the set list from any of the sample packs in the game. And you can actually change the sample on the fly as well using the effects dial, so you get to play around with it a little bit. Next quite cool feature is it's full 360. It'll spin any way you want, and it's got really nice bearings, so it'll spin for quite a while. And what this allowed us to do is add a few kind of flair features in that you'll see from perhaps old school DJing, like the rewind. So after you've hit a certain number of notes, you earn a rewind, which means you can rewind the track anywhere, and literally you just spin it 360, catch it again, and the track will rewind back, and you get to play it again. So we're finding people do it either to go, like the hardcore ones that want to score big, they'll go back through a hard section, like they'll save up their rewind, hit Euphoria, do a hard section, then come back and do it again, so they're hitting the maximum points.
Now let's say in the game there's a scratch where I, on the real turntables, have gone, for instance, forward, back, forward. On expert difficulty, the scratch icons in the game turn to arrows, so you have forward and back. So you would have to replicate that movement on the turntable controller. So when it gets to expert difficulty, the similarities are there, and it's pretty tough.
The mixes are as real to DJ as possible without feeling too intimidating as well, because I mean, for a person that's never seen or been behind a set of decks, having all that equipment in front of you can seem quite kind of overwhelming. So the idea when it came to actually making the mashups was to introduce the basic elements and the basic principles of DJing, but at the same time allowing the player to feel as if they were in total control of it.
I think the most difficult aspect of the game would probably be the coordination between the crossfader and the turntable platter. It's kind of like rubbing your tummy and patting your head at the same time. It can be pretty tricky at first. You've got Grandmaster Flash at the start of the game to take you through the tutorials so you're comfortable before you get onto the harder difficulties. But when it gets to expert, the coordination between the button presses and the crossfader movements is pretty tricky. That'll be the biggest challenge, I think. Because with Guitar Hero, for instance, there's 2 things to concentrate on. There's the buttons and there's the strumming. With this, you've got the buttons, the crossfader, and you've also got the effects dial here.
And then we had to work obviously with the music guys as well to have music that fitted those elements, because we didn't want it to be alien. We didn't want you to be crossfading but actually doing some random music thing. You had to be cutting from one track to another or cutting one track out. We didn't want to make a simulator, but we wanted to make something that was at least based in kind of the DJ world.
FreeStyle Games is situated across 2 different locations in the UK. We have a London studio, which is where we are today, and that's the office where all the music is created. So this studio is quite unusual for a video game developer in that it's a room full of DJs and turntables.
FreeStyle has been in Leamington since we started in 2002, and it's always been dev focused. That's kind of where our games were. We'd never had this whole music development side before. When we started to think about building our own team rather than just using external people, it was kind of obvious that a lot of the talent's in London. There seemed no need to try and force people out of it. The talent's here, they're creative, they're feeding off the London music scene. They've all got their own kind of DJ related things outside of work as well. We wanted these guys to still feel like DJs and music producers that they are, and not be drawn into the kind of too much into the dev side, but them still be able to work with the dev team. So we have the guys regularly talk on the phone, they're regularly coming up, or our design team's coming down, and there's a good collaboration. But it was more about keeping a music vibe and a music feel in this studio.
Well, we have quite a few different roles in the studio here. We have a scratch DJ, Blakey. We also have a lot of producer DJs who who put the tracks together. They essentially compose the level, they compose the gameplay, and they work closely with the design team on how to finesse and improve the gameplay. We also have a small team of DJs who come up with the initial concepts for the ways that we could blend tracks together. But it takes a game developer's touch to add that finesse that you need to create a great rhythm action game. And so they send us lots of feedback on the mixes saying, maybe you could tweak the mix like this or make it a little bit more intense here because that'll give a better gaming experience. We have remixers here who love blending odd tracks together and hearing interesting blends, have fun ears in terms of how to mix records together. It's not a safe approach to the way we could have put the music together for DJ Hero. It was a fun and slightly, in places slightly out there, but that's what I love about it, and that's what I hope people are going to enjoy about the product, is that DJing is playing with music.
The fact that the music for the game was created in London, especially we're on Brick Lane in the East End of London, and there's a lot of diversity around here. There's a lot of different stuff going on musically. All the DJs we have here are, DJs in their own right. They've all got their own careers going on, and they pretty much all of them play quite eclectic music. So we're into a lot of different styles of music. Towards the start of the development of the game, we experimented with doing a lot of mixes which were obviously 2 records, because the whole idea of being a DJ is not just playing 1 record, it's playing 2. So we did a lot of experimentation with making levels with just 1 song. So imagining you had 2 copies of the same record on both turntables. But we found it a lot more fun to be able to take 2 tracks that you know and you love and mix them up.
It's not as simple as just saying we're going to put that song in our game. This game's a lot more complicated because initially you've got a much wider pool of genres of content that you can take from, right? So you have pop and dance music and hip hop and electro, and you can also put rock tracks in there. And so we start with a huge list of content that we can potentially work with, maybe 6,000 songs that we started with, and then we just start to whittle them down. We start to group them up into areas of content. We look at how popular particular tracks are. From that list of 300 songs, we started to generate mix ideas. So we started sometimes live on the decks. We just get the tracks together and just start cutting them, just trying all the combinations. Through that process, we ended up with maybe 500 potential mixes that we felt were, they were working. The tracks were in key, they were in time, there was lyrical interplay, had a good energy, and the mix brought something fresh to each individual piece of content. We then circulated that around FreeStyle, around parts of Activision, just to get people's thoughts on them. And we took their feedback. And then we started building mixes, starting to get scratching, adding gameplay and balancing them. From that point, it was then a refinement again on those final mixes. Right, now let's really, really play them. Which ones are the best? Start making difficult decisions about having to lose mixes that, we liked. Until we just whittled it down until we reached the soundtrack and the mix list in the final game that we were comfortable with.
The thinking behind some of the tracks that we selected was diversity, really. Trying to get as broad a spectrum of music as we possibly could. There's been no other music game with as much content and a wider scope of genres than this before. There's lots of different styles in the game. There's lots of dance music tracks, some of which are focused on lots of button presses. There's a mix with Tiesto, track by Tiesto called Elements of Life, and a track by Benny Benassi called Satisfaction. Now that is super button pressy. There's not a whole lot of scratching in there, and I think that complements the style of that music. That's the one level that I think is closest to Through the Fire and Flames, Guitar Hero 3.
So we build the levels in just a standard off-the-shelf music sequencer package. So, with wave files, and we just put it all together, we piece it together, and we take scratching recorded directly off the decks in place. We sort of do takes like a vocalist. We've got a section here, we want to do a scratch solo, and we play it, and Blakey does the cuts, and it's like, no, do it again. That's the take, that's the keeper. And we put that into the mix. We then really accurately mark up exactly how the DJ would perform the mix that we've constructed. So We'd add the scratching. Was that a forward? Was that a back? Was that a spin back? Where did they move the fader at that point? We go and annotate that in MIDI, and then you play it and you think that bit could be a bit harder, or that didn't feel connected, and you go back and you tweak it and you play it and you tweak it and you play it, and you repeat that until you're very tired, but it's playing really well. And then we send it off to the design guys.
We take the scratch audio and the original tracks and we basically put them into this program called Live. So A is the left deck, B is the right deck, and anything on S is on that middle stream, the red button stream, which is your sample stream, right? So this mix is Rihanna Disturbia versus the Tramps Disco Inferno. Love this mix. As you can see, we've used the a cappella of Rihanna versus the instrumental of the Tramps, right? These notes basically represent those gems you see coming down the highway. So they basically trigger off the actual visuals, and these are associated with these scratches. Right, so basically it's a case of aligning the original audio with the scratches, and then placing these little MIDI notes, which represent the actual scratch icons, which then trigger off the actual visual gems that you see in game. And that's basically how you'd create, an element of gameplay in any mix. Once that's done, we code it up, or in terminology terms, mark it up, render it into game, test it, and then it's like a massive refining process in terms of getting a good balance between great gameplay and great sonics. It's weird at first because DJ Hero is like a brand new concept. A lot of the artists didn't know what to expect, or how their music, which is so precious to them, was going to get treated.
As soon as they got their hands on the game, within about 10 minutes, and they'd played it, they'd heard some of the mixes we put together using other people's content, they're just all like, okay, great, our content is in safe hands and this is fun, so yeah, let's do it.
What they were liked was that their craft was now going to get a platform that was a bit larger. It kind of took music to the masses in a different way. So introducing people that maybe would never have listened to a mashup and never listened to Shadow, they're now going to get to hear it in a different way.
I think a lot of the scepticism was probably to do with who we would get involved, what tracks we would use, things like that. Well, we've been lucky enough to have some of the best DJs in the world involved with our game. We've got Jazzy Jeff's contributed, we've got Daft Punk, Scratch Perverts, Z-Trip.
Something that's been really satisfying for everyone is to see the sheer excitement on all of their faces, because if you really think about it, this is an art form which people like Jazzy Jeff and Grandmaster Flash have been crafting for about 20-25 years. Do you know what I mean? And now that something like that's been turned into a product which the entire world can now engage in and experience, I think to them it's sort of like the idea of they've kind of reached the top of the mountain in a sense.
I think they were pleased that we went to them, and they were pleased to be involved with the game. They've helped us make sure that our game is credible, which I'm 100% sure it is.
The DJ wasn't meant to be a simulator, but authenticity was key as well. I mean, we wouldn't have this room full of the guys we've got if we weren't serious about it. It needed to be authentic. The mixes needed to be authentic.
One thing that's really cool is that because we've sat with them and worked with them closely on it, we've always made sure that their mixes have their kind of signature sound embedded in their mixes. So when you're playing a Shadow mix, that's a Shadow cut, and you feel like Shadow when you're doing those cuts.
And I think if it hadn't been authentic, we wouldn't have had the endorsement of those guys. So I think it's a credit to the London music team that they've absolutely nailed it, and that's why we built this team in the first place, because that music is key. If it wasn't DJ music put together by DJs in that way, then it wouldn't have worked.
So don't stop, get it until you know that I heard it through the grapevine.
It's been an amazing experience, and everyone's really psyched, and everyone's just really excited to sort of see and gauge the public reaction, because at the end of the day it's all about what people think.
Most people have got a taste in different areas of music, and if it's a good example of a certain genre, they'll like it. That's certainly how everyone here feels. No one likes to feel constricted by genre or kind of baggage of a certain musical style.
I think with a DJ setup, it's quite intimidating. People would walk up to the set of decks and be like, what the hell? It looks quite intimidating. we've simplified it so people can like, you know, learn about the fundamentals of DJing and what it's all about without, you know, feeling intimidated. I think everyone wants to be a DJ. I really do.
I would love for people to discover music that they might not have listened to, genres of music potentially that they may never have heard before, and for it to ignite an interest in listening to different types of music.
Real DJs, when they get their hands on DJ Hero, they'll probably breeze through, because they'll be used to crossfade movements and all that stuff. They'll probably breeze through to hard and expert, but by the time they hit expert difficulty, you have to actually move the turntable. The scratches have to be exactly how I or any of the guest DJs in the game have performed them. So you have to move the record in exactly the same way. So it can be pretty tricky. I think a lot of people are going to trip up on some of the levels that we've got. I'm convinced that our game is like very true to DJ culture. It's very credible. I think the track list is, you know, there's some very commercial stuff which is still, in my opinion, good music, and there's also some classic stuff. There's some underground stuff. There's a track by Noisier in the game. There's Eric B and Rakim, you know, pioneers of hip hop. I think hopefully people will go away from the game and say, you know, it's a very credible thing. It's very true to DJ culture. Musically, it's spot on, and that's what I think. That's what I think we've managed to do the game. Very proud of it, as I'm sure everyone in this room is actually.
When the game comes out in October, end of the October 30th, I mean, we're really excited about it. We've had our heads down working on it for a long time. We feel really close to the product, and we just want people to enjoy it and kind of get that social experience from it, have their friends around, have parties from it. It'd be that add-on or that new reason to have a party where people had their Guitar Heroes parties before. We want DJ Hero parties to start happening. That would be the ultimate for us. And one of the things we've seen recently is people playing two-player against each other, and how, I don't know, there's this real combative element to it, which we've kind of built in, but we didn't expect to be as big as it has been received. And I'm just looking forward to seeing people play it, to be honest.
At the moment, all I can say is that we're definitely concentrating on all of the downloadable content. That's our main kind of focus at the moment. We've been approaching a lot of artists and a lot of producers to get involved in that. So we've recently announced David Guetta, who's now the European ambassador for DJ Hero. We've got obviously Eminem and Jay-Z, who are the American ambassadors. And yeah, from now on, it's all about basically researching into genres of music which we didn't quite touch on in the first edition, and making a load of mixes for the downloadable side of things for people to play, basically. So we're looking into drum and bass a bit more. We're looking into things like, you know, minimal house and trance a bit more, and just trying to go out there and cover as many genres as possible.
In the short term, it's like making sure that we support the product with a lot of great downloadable content, not just mixes, but sample packs as well. And then it's looking towards the next product and how we want to innovate, but I can't talk about that.